Baruch Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Zevachim daf Yud Gimel Zevachim 13. The Mishnah tells us we're going to start on 13a. At the Mishnah, the daf is dedicated for a shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzalah for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. And it's Eitz Sarah. The Mishnah tells us HaPesach ve'achatos sheshachtan shelo lishman. So let's say you slaughtered the Pesach and the chatos with the wrong intent, which we said disqualifies it. And kibel v'halach v'zarak shelo lishman, or if he just did the kabbalah, the halach, or the zrika shelo lishman, or if he basically didn't do the kabbalah, the receiving the blood, the conveying of the blood, or the sprinkling, the right intent. O lishman, o shelo lishman, o shelo lishman, o lishman, o lishman. Or if he did any part of it shelo lishman and the rest lishman. In all these cases, psulim, they're all invalid. And the Mishnah is going to tell us examples of the last two halachos. Ketzai lishman v'shelo lishman. What does it mean lishman and then shelo lishman? So if he started off by doing it l'shem Pesach, l'shem shlamim, he started for the sake of the Pesach and then continued for the shlamim. What shelo lishman or lishman? L'shem shlamim or l'shem Pesach. And then if he did it for shlamim and then for the purpose of the Pesach. Shazevach nifsal ba'arba dvarim. The carbon itself can become disqualified with the improper intent during any one of the four things. What are they? Shchita, kibul, hiluch, uzrika. That's the position of the Tanna Kama for the slaughter, receiving the blood, the conveying of the blood, and the sprinkling of the blood. Rabbi Shimon machshir b'hiluch. Rabbi Shimon allows it as it relates to the conveying of the blood. He says that if you have the wrong intent during the conveying of the blood, it's not going to disqualify it. Shaya Omer, because he said the first three activities, or three out of the four, the Shlita, the Kabbalah, and the Zrika, it's impossible to perform the service without it. But it's possible to do the carbon without receiving the blood, because you could slaughter next to the altar and then sprinkle it. So then it would be, therefore, it's not necessary. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, if the Kohen is walking the blood in a place where he has to walk, machsheva poselis, then it's going to be disqualified, improper thought. But if he's walking in a place where he doesn't need to walk, then it doesn't invalidate. The Gemara is going to explain on Daf Tes Vav what Rabbi Eliezer means. So that says the Gemara, the Kabbalah mipasla, if you have the improper thought during the receiving of the blood, is it in fact disqualified? V'atanya v'ikrivu zu Kabbalah sadam. It says, and you shall bring it. This refers to the receiving of the blood. Maybe it's the sprinkling. So what's the krivu? Zu Kabbalah Sadam. This refers to the receiving of the blood. B'nei Aaron HaKohanim, and then when it says Vikrivu B'nei Aaron HaKohanim, Shetei B'Kohen Kosher B'Kli Sharis. It has to be done by a Kohen who's kosher and a Kli Sharis. The Gemara says, "An Amar Rabbi Akiva." And Rabbi Akiva says, "Minayel Kabbalah Shalotei B'Kohen Kosher B'Kli Sharis." Rabbi Akiva says, "I'll give you a different source that the Kabbalah needs to be with a Kohen and a Kli Sharis. Nemar Kam B'nei Aaron, V'Nemar La'on Elish Mos B'nei Aaron HaKohanim HaMeshuchim." Here it says B'nei Aaron, and then it says below, these are the names of B'nei Aaron who are anointed. Ma'olam B'Kohen Kosher B'Kli Sharis. Just like there, it's by a Kohen who's kosher and a Kli Sharis. Avkam B'Kohen Kosher Kli Sharis. Also here. Amar Rabbi Tarfon, so Rabbi Tarfon says, so according to that, we see from here that the Kabbalah Stam is the same as the Zrika and the Shlita and the halacha, that it's essential. It says Rabbi Tarfon, he gives like an oath, I will cut off my sons. Hefresh ben Kabbalah Zrika. There, I heard that there's a distinction between receiving and the sprinkling. Failure first, but I don't know what it is. I heard it, but I don't remember what it is. Amar Rabbi Akiva Ani Afarish Kabbalah lo asaba machshava kamaisa. When it comes to the receiving of the blood, the Torah does not treat machshava kamaisa, meaning to say, and the Gemara assumption at this point is that we assume that just like an action disqualifies, but an improper thought will not disqualify. Meaning to say that if the Kohen does it shalom shema or with pigol, that it's not disqualified. So this seems to contradict our Mishnah because our Mishnah says improper thought by Kabbalah does disqualify. So uzrika also by machshava kamaisa, but by sprinkling, the Gemara, the machshava is going to be considered like an action and disqualifying. Kibul b'chutz eno chayav kares, and also they're different. And if you receive the blood outside of the base of mikdash, he doesn't get kares. But zarko b'chutz, but if you sprinkle the blood outside the base of mikdash, anish kares, you get kares. Kibul psulin, if people who received it were disqualified, ein chayav olav, they don't get misa for doing so. But ziraku psulin chayav olav. But if those who are disqualified sprinkle it, they're going to get misa. They're going to get death from heaven. So Amar Rabbi Tarfon ha'avoda at iteta yaminu small. He says basically another oath. Ha'avoda, you did not turn to the right or to the left. Meaning to say that Rabbi Akiva said it exactly like he heard it. Ani shamati ve'en l'farish. Atad dareshu maskim l'shmua. I heard it and I didn't know how to explain it, but yet you taught it and arrived at the same teaching that I had heard. Meaning to say you said on your own exactly what I thought I had heard. Kalashon hazeh amarlo Akiva kol ha'poresh mimcha k'poresh michayev. He says, Akiva, whoever departs from you, it's like he's departing from his life. So Akiva kol ha'poresh mimcha k'poresh michayev. Whoever departs from you is like he's departing from his life. Amarava. So anyway, we see from here that Kabbalah is, according to this approach, this reading the Bryce is saying that an improper thought by the receiving of the blood does not disqualify. Amarava lokasha kam b'machshavas pigol kam b'machshavas shelo lishma. Now, when do we say the receiving of the blood its thought is not disqualifying? That's by pigol. But if it's shelo lishma, it will disqualify it. And they could not. I mean, indeed, we can defer this. The katani, because we state zevach nifsal, because it states that the zevach is what's disqualified. Velo katani mispagal, and it doesn't say. Our Mishnah says that the zevach is disqualified, but it doesn't say it becomes pigol. Shema, no, we see our Mishnah is just discussing disqualifying intent of shelo lishma, but not the pigol. So where it says, wait 1 second. So your answer is that machshavas pigol will pasla b'Kabbalah. You're basically saying that if you have an improper thought, it does not during the Kabbalah that machshavas pigol will pasla b'Kabbalah. Is that really the case? Vatanya. Didn't we learn in the Bryce? So yacholote machshava moelas al b'zrika l'vad. I might think the machshava only disqualifies by the sprinkling of the blood. Minayel rabos shlita v'kabbalah. How do I know if you have improper thought with shlita and kabbalah? It also will disqualify with pigol. Tamomer v'meyachol yechol mibsar zevach shamav lo yeratzeh. Meaning to say it includes also kabbalah and shlita is also disqualifying. Yachol shani marbeh. I might think to include also the sprinkling of the pouring of the shirayim, the remnants at the base of the mizbeach, and the burning of the innards, that they're also improper pigol, would make an improper pigol. Which means to say, zricha b'kol ha'itza. So there's a general thing there. Lama yatzta. Why was it excluded? Just like Zrika is essential for the kapara. So it includes any avoda which is essential for the kapara. That's a shvicha shirayim v'aktor simurim shema akvenes kapara. So it excludes these other parts that they are not going to be something that makes people. So anyway, we see from this brisa that if you have an improper thought during the receiving of the blood, it can make something into pigul. So why does the other brisa say that there's no pigul by the Kabbalah, by the receiving of the blood? El kasha. The Gemara says not difficult. Hada amar areni shochet amanas lekabel damar u'machar. Hada amar areni mikabel damar amanas l'shfoch shirayim machar. So the first brisa, which says there's no key pigul by Kabbalah, is where he says, slaughtering with the intent to receive the blood tomorrow, then it doesn't become pigul. So since he's saying I'm slaughtering with the intent to receive the blood tomorrow, that's not going to be pigul. But if he says mikabel dama, but if he says I'm receiving the blood with the intent to pour it tomorrow, then it does become pigul. Because since he's intending to sprinkle the blood after the time, that's going to be an action of pigul. But if somebody says that the Kabbalah be carried out after that time, that's not pigul. Because the pigul only applies to the sprinkling of the blood or the eating, an act of consumption. If you have the improper thought through the sprinkling of the remnants and the burning of the limbs, that does not disqualify it. Through pigul, that does not disqualify it. I might think there's only pigul about the eating of the meat. So basically this price is indicating that anytime you pour the blood on the mizbeach, even the shirayim, it shall become pigul. So the Gemara says, what is if you say I'm sprinkling the blood with the intent to pour the remnants tomorrow? That's pigul. But if you say I'm sprinkling the blood with the intent to do the imurin tomorrow, then it's not pigul, because that's not one of the four main things. You have to have the proper thought during one of the four main things. So the Gemara is now going into a discussion of another halacha of pigul. So we've been discussed several times about the chatos pinimios, the inner chatos, whose blood is thrown inside the kodesh, the sanctuary, rather than on the mizbeach hachitza, the outer altar. The kohen dips his finger into a kli that has the dam of these karbanos, the blood of these sacrifices, and applies with his finger to certain parts of the sanctuary, the parochas, and the mizbeach. So, is that capable of becoming pigul? Amar Rav Yehuda b'rei Rabbi Chia. Shamati shetfilas etzba mefagelas b'chatas pinimis. He said, I heard that the dipping of the finger with the wrong intent to apply it by the inner chatas also can make pigul. Shamas Elfa. So the famous Elfa heard this. Amar kamedra papa kudmo manu pigul al mishlamim. Where do we learn the source of pigul? From shlamim. Just like by shlamim, where there's never a case of dipping the finger, so therefore there's no pigul. So too, also by chatas, it should not be effective. So the Gemara says, is everything learned out from shlamim? Ima shlamim shelo lishma ein motzi midei pigul. Avchata shelo lishma ein motzi midei pigul. We're going to learn out everything from shlamim, just like shlamim shelo lishma does not take it out of the category of pigul. Meaning to say, if you offer a shlom shlo lishma, there's no pigul, because shlom shlo lishma is disqualified, and a pigul has to be something that otherwise it would be kosher. So therefore, however, if it was offered shlo lishma, it could still become pigul. I might say afchata shlo lishma imotzi midei pigul. Also, chata shlo lishma should not remove from pigul, but we know that it doesn't. It comes from the extra psukim. Hachinami miribuya dekrakas comes from the extra psukim. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, the Aliyah zu shamati. When I was in the Aliyah, the attic, I heard the following. Tfilas etzba mifagelas, that dipping the finger can cause an inner chatas to become pugel. Tai beirish lakish kumla manu pigel el mislamim. Mashlam main tfilah etzba mifagelas ben. Avchatas ain't tfilah etzba mifagelas. No, since we only learned from shlamim, there's no dipping by the finger by shlamim. It shouldn't work. So he says, shouldn't become pigul. So the Gemara says, do we learn everything from Shlomim? If Shlomim, which is low lishma, it still can become pigul. Also, chatas you might think can't become pigul. That if it's low lishma, it could still become pigul. But we say it's not that. It's the same thing we said before. So we don't learn anything. Yes, in Hakol Mishlamim, we learn everything from Shlamim. All the chutzlam Makom Posel Shlamim, since outside of its place makes the Shlamim not able to become pigul. V'shalo Lishmo Posel B'chatas, and Shalo Lishmo disqualifies B'chatas. Ma chutzlam Makom Posel B'Shlamim, Motz Midei Pigul. Shalo Lishmo Posel B'chatas, Motz Midei Pigul. So as long as it disqualifies, then it takes it out of pigul. I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah Mitzada Tavra. Mitzidah Tavra. From its side, you break that. Just like Chutz Mekomo that disqualifies Shlamim. I mean, it applies to all the sacrifices. Tomar b'Shalo Shmo, we're going to say that by Shalo Shmo, Shein Noeg al Pesach Chatas Bovad. That only applies to Pesach and Chatas. And what do you have to say? If in the case of Shlamim, we say it's something that disqualifies, but it takes it out of pigul. But something that's essential can also bring it to pigul. Hachinami davar posaba motzi de pigul. Davar ma'akeba mevio de pigul. So it's something that's essential. Disqualifies brings it to pigul. So we see from here that if it's essential, it can cause it to be pigul. So dipping the finger should become pigul. So Amar Mari Afanana Metanina Zakal. Komets v'nosim b'kuyu v'amoch u'makter. Everybody takes the komets and puts it in a utensil. When it does halacha and aktara, that can cause something to become pigul. Bishlam komets haina shochet. So the kmitza is shochet and moch is the moach. Makter nami haina zorik, and one who does the aktara, the burning, that's like the sprinkling. And what's the placing a utensil? It's like the Kabbalah. Midami. Is it really essential to Kabbalah? It's not the same thing. There, the boy comes out on his own. Here, he takes the kmitza and puts it in. But since he has to put the komets into a utensil, for sure it's essential. It's like the Kabbalah. Since here too, he has to dip his finger in the blood. For sure it's halacha. Or it says no. It's always similar to Kabbalah. The Kamar Zevachim and Mela Hasaviu Kashakaviyah. If you want to say, no, there, it's always similar to Kabbalah. And if you say there, the blood comes on its own. Here he comes and takes it and puts it there. But both of them are in the end in the utensil. It doesn't matter how it gets there. So the Gemara then is going to go into a discussion again to try and prove that the dipping of the finger in the Chatas Panemius is like halacha. And the Gemara will take that up, but we'll stop here. Baruch Hashem. Stop here on the bottom of your Gimel on the base, and we'll repeat this stuff tomorrow. We just want to say that the daf tomorrow will be at 5 to 5 p.m. because we'll start a little earlier so we can do discussion of Kol Nidre after.